if I want to improve my mental health generally after postpartum, I'm not depressed, but I don't feel like I'm in my best self, let's say. I really want to take care of myself. I want to feel myself better. So what could help me to be in a better place after giving birth and like in the first couple of years of the child being quite small, maybe months?
Well, this is kind of something as a little model that I came up with to talk about some of the sort of things that mothers think about and worry about, that we don't necessarily talk about in breastfeeding education. So I call them the 5 I's of motherhood. One of the big ones is isolation, and so mothers who are maybe not feeling good, a lot of times you find out they're really quite isolated. And so it's like, that's one of the things we want to make sure, that mothers do is get out of the house. Even if you just go out and walk outside, it's like, I would recommend doing things like that, taking kind of care of yourself in that way. And just, even if you don't go someplace, like let's say you don't have a car or something like that, just sometimes being kind of out and just breaking that kind of thing. And also too, a lot of times people, they don't have any kind of sound that they hear during the day. So, kind of start thinking about, okay, what can you do? Can you listen to some podcasts? Can you hear some music? But try to really break out. I remember this one mom I was talking to, and I talked back and forth with her, over several times when I was a legislative leader, in Maine and New Hampshire. And we'd had a huge amount of snow that year. And she was way up in northern Maine. So that's right kind of on the border of Canada, so it gets snowy. And where we were was 100 inches. They had more. Okay. And she was slowly losing her mind. I will say this honestly. She had such, they talk about cabin fever, which is what, people that were out on the prairie, pioneers and stuff, the women, a lot of times were left, for weeks at a time, and they would go mad. They literally would. Isolation is a big deal. But anyway, I was just saying to her, I said, you got to get your kids, put your kids in a snowsuit. She had a new baby and a 2-year-old. I said, get them in their snowsuits and just go through the McDonald's drive-thru. I said, just something simple. You've got to get out and see some people, you really, because it was so awful. And she was really, the snow made it even worse, just really isolating. The other one is like identity. You start thinking, well, who am I now that I have this baby? And you feel like you've really lost yourself. That happens a lot. Mothers kind of like worry that they've lost who they are, and they're not able to kind of really get that back. And so, it's something that I actually can also be really hard. And, so what I try to do is kind of reframe, and say, well, you haven't lost yourself. It's still there, but you are functioning with a different part of your brain right now. You're functioning more kind of like with that right, because you're trying to connect to this baby, but your left side is still there, and you're still, but now you've just added this new great dimension. Okay. But also, incompetence is another one. You just feel like, especially if you've been out in the workforce and you've been competent, and then suddenly you're back at 0, and you're like, that's a terrible feeling. And I think that all of these things contribute to mothers actually then, stopping breastfeeding because it's just too hard.
I completely can relate to these feelings because like I was in the workforce for I was 36 when I had my child.
Yeah.
I was super confident. I had my career, so I was like, very,
Absolutely.
very confident. And then suddenly, you cannot even plan if you're going to have a shower today. Or a
Right,
cup of
exactly,
tea. It's
exactly.
just like, what?
Okay, so the 4th I would be idleness. And so again, that feeling like you're not doing anything. And so that would be something you probably experience too. It's like you're go, and you're running around, and all of a sudden you have, like no control over your schedule, and you think like, I'm doing, quote, nothing. And so that can actually be really hard. And let's see, identity, I already talked about that one. Okay. And the last one is intensity, and it's like, the idea is that, it's so difficult to just deal with this 24/7, that is so hard. And so again, like I said, the ways to kind of help cope with that is to put in some support. So for example, somebody can hold the baby for a few minutes so you can get a shower and just take a little break. And again, I'm not necessarily proposing a lot of long separations, but you can still have a break, and kind of get out and get away. And that's actually, again, one of the things I kind of recommended, for new moms coping with this kind of stuff is the real basic stuff. And it's stuff, you remember with COVID and everybody had to go home? I had a lot of colleagues who were really having a hard time with that. Now, I've worked at home for many years, I've been a telecommuter for most of my career. I was saying, okay, so here's a few things to kind of help. But one of them is put on clean clothes every day. Just because you can work in your pajamas doesn't mean you should. And even if it's just something really simple, just a t-shirt and a pair of yoga pants, something that's going to make you feel good and comfortable, and try to have a little bit of structure in your day if you can. Those are kinds of things that help. And it's like I said, it's going to be loose because a lot of it kind of has to be flexible because of the baby. But it's like, roughly what time will you have lunch? Roughly what time will you have dinner? What do you think you might go out today? You try to kind of think through things like that just to give you a little structure, because that loss of time is something that really can actually work mentally on people. And this is actually, there was a couple of nice COVID studies about this, because that was one of the things people lost is their sense of time. Suddenly they're home and their weekdays merged into their weekends, and it was just like this endless. And I think new mothers experience that. I really do. I think that that's something that a lot of new mothers experience, is just this idea. And so you start thinking these things, and you ran around and around. And, see, then formula starts looking pretty good then. You think that I would have more freedom then. I could leave the baby with somebody. You could do all these things, but again, part of I think where the support comes in is if we can help mothers see how you can do things with your baby, that it doesn't always have to involve a lot of separation, and again, like I said, some things obviously, you need to have a little bit of adult time, but, you can usually work around it, and it's like, that's, I think, where kind of the help of sort of, more experienced mothers can be, it's kind of like, hey, you can still do this, accomplish your goals, but still have a little space for yourself. And I really think that that's kind of a bottom line that's essential. I hate to use the term me time because I think it gets used a lot to justify some pretty selfish behavior. But let's call it something else. We use self-care. We kind of use that a lot during COVID, especially. That really kind of got to be sort of overused. But there needs to be some space in the schedule for you. Just even if you have a half hour to lay down in the bed and read a book, these are things that can be really helpful. And especially if you've had any kind of previous mental health issue, try to plan for this ahead of time if you can. And if you can't, do you have a friend? Do you have a community? And if you don't have that, where could you maybe find it? Are there some parenting groups in your community that you can reach out to? Is there an online community that you can reach out to? So there's different kind of ways to approach this, but I think that is actually kind of a bottom line. I think the idea that you just have to just pour everything into the baby, I've not seen that have a good ending. The baby's needs are going to trump yours for a little bit, but that doesn't mean you have no needs. You got to kind of still take care of this stuff. And, again, there's a lot of ways to do that without necessarily having to sacrifice what you want to do and be the kind of parent you want to be.
I agree. And it's not to contradict to what you're saying, it's just probably to add on that I think that collectively as a society and at least the government here and in my other country where I lived is that we are not doing a good job in terms of sort of creating the spaces for mothers with the newborns and fathers with the newborns to be out there somewhere, not in their houses. Like I can go somewhere and this place is friendly and I can be there with a very little child, not a toddler, but really someone very small. So I don't think there are a lot of options collectively in the environment of the city.
I think that's true here, but there are definitely some. And again, that's sometimes where, talking to other mothers, you can kind of help find where those are. And again, you can kind of just try things. Okay, will this work? And sometimes, we've had a lot of, indoor play spaces. Some of those have closed, since COVID. And they're just starting to kind of open up. But, there can be places where people can gather. In most places. Or, again, like I said, it might be a walk in the neighborhood and maybe you put the baby in a sling and pop into a store. Just try to kind of do things like that. Just find out where those places are, so you can ask around and really kind of don't give that up. Because again, like I said, the governments, I think, are going to honestly be the slowest. And that's something like if you have a, local breastfeeding coalition or something like that, you can give businesses awards for being breastfeeding friendly. They can put a sticker in their window. And I mean that, people then people like things like that. They see stickers and they think, okay, how can we be friendly to breastfeeding mothers? And so it's kind of like, this things kind of can start at a community level. That's one thing, when I was working on the recent edition of the depression book, it's just like, I was amazed at how much stuff people can do on community level without even necessarily involving the healthcare system, or the government. It's like these support programs that people kind of just put in place in their community that were really effective, and they managed to do it with, and again, you probably work in nonprofit too, you managed to do it because you rub two nickels together and you think, wow, I've got $1,000. We're rich. Get out of the business world if people don't think you have any money. But, there's a lot of things that can be kind of done at a community level, and again, like I said, even if you get a few, of your local parenting support organizations together, you can start doing stuff like, saying, hey, are you a breastfeeding friendly business? Hey, if you are, we'll give you the sticker and the certificate to put in, and then other businesses see it and they think, well, we'd like to do that. Or they don't want to. And then you kind of know, okay, probably don't go to this place. But then again, it creates business, you're going to drive people, so it's kind of a win-win for the businesses who pick it.
I agree, yeah. And totally agree that community can do amazing things just, to...
Yeah. And sometimes it starts with one gung-ho person trying to kind of like get in there and like try to make a change, so even kind of on a small level, a lot of times you can do that. But, as you get more experience, you'll kind of find the places and you'll find your rhythm, but part of it again is to kind of get over these thoughts that just kind of really keep you stuck. And then again, formula starts looking really good. And I know women who've actually gone back before their maternity leave was up because they just couldn't stand it. They couldn't stand the isolation. And what I kind of always point out, is like isolation is used as a form of torture. It's considered inhumane by most of the human rights organizations. I mean, and yet somehow new mothers are supposed to cope with this. It's kind of like, it's too hard for prisoners, but it's okay for you. It's like, it doesn't make a lot of sense, but it's routine. It happens all the time.
Yeah. And I think it's very unnatural for us being isolated. And, before we never raised children by ourselves. It's always were the community. There always were people around you, the elderly people, the, cousins, everyone, the big extended family in the community. There wasn't never at the time, like let's say 200 years ago, when it was like one mom raising a child.
Right. Yeah, this is really kind of a different time. And I think, if anything, we've become more isolated, not less. A lot of community groups have stopped meeting, a lot of, but again, you can find community. It is out there. So I don't want to be discouraging, but I'm saying, yeah, this is definitely an obstacle.